A trauma nurse drags a coughing little boy through smoke. His father, a Mafia boss, steps from the shadows. Name your price. Her answer? Nothing. His offer? Marriage. For protection. For custody. For control. Enemies whisper. The fire wasn't random. Someone wants the boy. A fake engagement becomes a public claim, and a private line she swore she wouldn't cross. A court petition hits. A concerned relative. A mole inside the mansion. A secret from the nurse's past that can be twisted into a lie. A van door slams. She's taken. He comes like a storm, precise, lethal, unstoppable. He offers the ring again. But this time it's not leverage. It's forever, on her terms. Is this payment the only way to keep a child alive? Or the trap that burns them all? When love looks like protection and protection looks like a cage? What would you risk to save the one thing you can't live without? The acrid stench of smoke clung to Quinn's scrubs as she leaned against the emergency room desk, her fingers cramping around the incident report. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh against her burning eyes after hours in the warehouse's darkness. Her shoulder throbbed where the beam had struck, but she'd refused anything stronger than ibuprofen. She needed her head clear. Ms. Hart? The voice behind her was quiet but carried enough authority to make the nearby nurses pause their rounds. A moment. Quinn turned, maintaining her professional mask despite exhaustion seeping into her bones. Ronan Caruso stood in the shadows of a small alcove, his dark suit unmarked by the chaos they'd just left behind. Only the slight dishevel of his dark hair and the tension around his eyes betrayed that his son had nearly died tonight. Mr. Caruso, she kept her tone neutral. Leo's test came back clear. The oxygen helped, and his lungs show no signs of damage. I'm aware. His gaze was steady, assessing. The doctors are preparing his discharge papers now. Quinn nodded and tried to step past him, but he shifted slightly, blocking her path without touching her. The movement was subtle, practiced, and something in her gut tightened at how easily he controlled the space. You refused payment from the paramedics, he said, and from the fire captain. I was off duty. It wasn't an official response. She squared her shoulders despite the pain. I just happened to be close by. You broke protocol, entering without backup. It wasn't a question. His eyes narrowed fractionally. You risked your life for my son. I heard a child coughing. That's all that mattered. A muscle ticked in his jaw. Name anything. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Quinn had worked enough emergency shifts to recognize the weight of power around him, the careful distance others maintained. The whispers about the Caruso family followed certain patterns, respect threaded with fear. I don't want anything, she said firmly. I'm glad Leo's safe. That's enough. She tried again to move past him, but his presence seemed to fill the narrow space. The scent of expensive cologne cut through the hospital's antiseptic air. Ms. Hart. His voice dropped lower. I don't leave debts unpaid. It's not a debt. It's my job. On or off duty. Everything, he said carefully, is a transaction. Quinn felt the exhaustion giving way to irritation. Not everything, not saving a child. Something flickered across his expression, so brief she almost missed it. For a moment, the controlled facade cracked, showing a glimpse of the father who'd arrived at the warehouse, with barely contained panic in his eyes. Then consider it a father's gratitude, he said. Name your price. Mr. Caruso. Ronan. Mr. Caruso, she repeated firmly. I appreciate the offer, but I meant what I said. I don't want payment. She watched him process this, noting how still he became, like a predator scenting something unexpected. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across his sharp features, highlighting the calculating intelligence in his dark eyes. Everyone wants something, he murmured. Then I want you to let me leave. Quinn gestured at her smoke-stained scrubs. I've been on shift for 20 hours. I need a shower and sleep. His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. You're either very brave or very foolish to dismiss me so easily. I'm neither. I'm just tired. A nurse hurried past, giving them a wide berth. Quinn noticed how the other staff kept their eyes averted, their movements careful. The air felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. You saved my son, Ronan said softly. That creates certain obligations? The only obligation is making sure he follows up with his pediatrician in 3 days. Quinn met his gaze steadily. And maybe getting him some counseling. Fires can be traumatic for children. Another micro-expression crossed his face. This time something closer to surprise. She'd spent years reading patients' unspoken pain, and even this controlled man couldn't completely mask his tells. "You have experience with that?" "Enough to recognize the signs." She shifted her weight, wincing as her shoulder protested. "Now, if you'll excuse me, your injury needs proper attention." "It's been treated," by overworked EMTs in a parking lot. His tone hardened slightly. "I have a private physician who makes house calls." "Thank you, but no." Quinn straightened despite her fatigue. "Mr. Caruso, I understand you feel indebted, but I'm not comfortable accepting anything from you." "Because of who I am?" The question carried an edge. "Because I did what anyone would do." She held his gaze. "And because transactions, as you call them, come with strings, I prefer to avoid complications." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken implications. Quinn felt the weight of his scrutiny like a physical touch, measuring her words against some internal scale. "Interesting," he finally said. The word held layers she was too tired to decipher. Quinn took advantage of his momentary thoughtfulness to step around him, ignoring how her skin prickled at their proximity. She could feel his eyes following her as she moved toward the exit, her steps steady despite exhaustion dragging at her limbs. Quinn's back hit the wall as Ronan stepped closer, his presence filling the dim hospital corridor. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting shadows across his sharp features. "Marry me." His voice was low, matter-of-fact. Quinn blinked. Certain exhaustion had finally cracked her sanity. "What?" "A marriage of convenience, legal protections for Leo, round-the-clock security for you." He spoke with the calm efficiency of someone proposing a business merger. "Anyone who touches my son becomes a target. You need protection." "That's..." Quinn shook her head, struggling to process his words. "That's insane. You can't just..." "I can. I do." His dark eyes held hers. "This isn't a romantic overture, Ms. Hart. It's a practical solution." "Practical?" She almost laughed. "There's nothing practical about marrying a stranger." "You saved my son. You're no stranger." "One act of basic human decency doesn't make me marriage material." Quinn straightened, ignoring how her shoulder throbbed. "And I don't need protection." "You don't understand my world." "I understand enough to know I want no part of it." She met his gaze steadily. "You can't just buy people's lives, Mr. Caruso." "I'm trying to preserve yours." The corridor filled with approaching footsteps. Two detectives rounded the corner, their badges glinting under the harsh lights. Quinn recognized one from previous emergency calls. "Ms. Hart?" The older detective smiled tiredly. "We need your statement about the warehouse fire." The next hours blurred together in a haze of questions and forms. Quinn described finding Leo, the smoke patterns, the way the fire moved. She sat in a cramped interview room, throat raw from smoke and talking, while fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Through the window, she glimpsed Ronan in the waiting area. He hadn't left, hadn't even loosened his tie. He sat perfectly still, phone untouched, watching the corridor with predatory patience. His presence felt like pressure building behind her eyes. "One more thing," the younger detective said, flipping through his notes. "Did you notice anything unusual about the fire's spread pattern?" "It moved fast," Quinn said. "Faster than normal for that type of building?" The detectives exchanged looks. Through the thin walls, she heard fragments of conversation from the hallway. Accelerants near the stairwell and samples to the lab. Her stomach clenched. Not an accident then. When they finally released her, Ronan was waiting. He fell into step beside her as she headed for the exit, his long stride matching her tired stumble. "My offer stands," he said quietly. "Still no." "You don't understand gratitude in my world, Ms. Hart." His voice carried an edge of steel. "It must be ironclad, not spoken." "I understand perfectly." Quinn stopped, turning to face him. "You're used to solving problems with money and power, but I'm not a problem to solve." "No," he agreed softly. "You're a liability I need to protect." "I'm neither." She pushed through the hospital doors into the gray dawn light. "I'm just tired." The morning air felt thick with coming rain as Quinn climbed the stairs to her third-floor apartment. Her shoulders ached, smoke still clinging to her hair despite the hospital's shower. She fumbled for her keys, then froze. The lock was scratched, tiny metal shavings catching the early light. Her hand shook as she pushed the door open. Everything looked normal. Worn furniture, nursing textbooks stacked on the coffee table, yesterday's coffee mug in the sink. But something felt wrong, like a discordant note in a familiar song. Quinn moved through the apartment slowly, checking corners, closets, windows. Nothing seemed disturbed until she reached her bedroom. The bed was exactly as she'd left it, covers rumpled from her hurried departure for her shift. But there, centered on her pillow, lay a matchbook from the burned warehouse. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. A piece of paper fluttered out, smeared with ash or dirt. 5 words made her blood run cold. "We saw you carry him." Quinn's legs gave out and she sank onto the bed, the matchbook crushed in her fist. The morning light suddenly seemed too bright, too exposing through her uncovered windows. Every shadow held potential threats. She thought of Ronan's words about protection, about his world's version of gratitude. She thought of Leo's small body wrapped in the fire blanket, trusting her to keep him safe. The matchbook crackled as she uncurled her fingers. The cheap cardboard was dented from her grip, the logo partially obscured by soot. It was such a small thing to shatter her sense of security. Her phone sat heavy in her pocket. She could call the police, but what would she tell them? That someone had broken in just to leave a threat? That she'd stumbled into something bigger than a warehouse fire? Outside, a car door slammed. Quinn flinched, then forced herself to breathe. She was trained for emergencies, for keeping calm when others panicked. But this was different. This wasn't a trauma she could treat or a fire she could fight. This was a warning written in ash and malice, left on her own pillow while she saved a child's life. The morning light crept across her floor, turning the familiar shapes of her bedroom into something stranger and more threatening. Quinn sat perfectly still, the matchbook cooling in her palm, as her world shifted on its axis. Someone had been in her space, touched her things, left their threat where she slept. They'd watched her at the warehouse, seen her with Leo, and now they wanted her to know it. The scratch marks on her lock suddenly seemed more sinister. Not a clumsy break-in, but a message. "We can reach you. We can touch what's yours." Quinn's hands shook as she snapped photos of the matchbook and lock damage. Morning light streamed through her windows, making the scratches on the metal gleam. She'd dealt with trauma daily at the hospital, but this violation of her home space sent ice through her veins. She dialed Detective Morris's number, the card still crisp from their interview hours ago. Voicemail. Of course. She left a terse message about evidence at her apartment, then stared at the business card Ronan had slipped into her pocket. Heavy cream cardstock, just a number embossed in black. "This is Quinn Hart," she said when someone answered. She swallowed. "Ronan Caruso gave me this number." The line went dead. 20 minutes later, a black sedan purred to the curb below her window. 2 men in suits emerged, their movements precise and coordinated. Quinn stood in the hallway, still in yesterday's smoke-scented clothes, while they swept her apartment with practiced efficiency. She heard their quiet footsteps, the careful opening and closing of doors, the soft beeps of devices she couldn't identify. One guard spoke into his wrist mic, and minutes later, Ronan's familiar black SUV rolled to a stop behind the sedan. He filled her doorway, expression unreadable, as he studied the lock, then the matchbook she'd sealed in a plastic bag. "This is real," he said finally, "and immediate." "I got that impression." "The engagement story would protect you." He moved to her window, scanning the street. "No one touches the boss's fiancé. It's understood. I won't be forced into marriage by threats. This isn't about marriage." His voice held steel. "This is about keeping you alive. By moving into your fortress and playing pretend." Quinn crossed her arms. "That's not—" Glass exploded in her kitchen. Quinn barely registered the arc of the bottle before Ronan tackled her, his body covering hers, as flames erupted on her stove. Heat bloomed above them as sprinklers hissed to life. The acrid smell of accelerant filled the air, mixing with steam and smoke. Water soaked through Quinn's clothes as Ronan pulled her up, checking her for injuries with clinical hands. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, coughing. His guards had their weapons drawn, one speaking rapidly into a phone, while the other secured the perimeter. Sirens wailed in the distance. Everything happened in a blur after that. Fire crews contained the small blaze, while police photographed the scene. Quinn gave her statement 3 times, watching puddles form on her floor from the sprinklers. A young officer showed her a neighbor's phone footage already circulating online, the bottle flying through her window in HD slow motion. Detective Morris arrived, pulling her aside with grave eyes. "Your name will leak by nightfall," he said quietly. "These people have connections. We can offer witness protection, but they have connections there, too," Quinn finished. Her apartment reeked of smoke and chemicals. Everything she owned was either charred or water damaged. She changed into dry clothes from her emergency go bag while officers finished processing the scene. The clothes smelled like her locker at the station, antiseptic and fabric softener, a reminder of normal life just 24 hours ago. Ronan waited by his SUV as dusk settled over the street. Quinn approached slowly, her bag heavy on her shoulder. "This is temporary," she said, "and purely protective." He nodded once. "I mean it, Ronan. I'm not actually marrying you." "Of course." He opened the car door, then pressed something into her palm. "But this needs to be visible by morning." The ring was heavy, its diamond catching the last light. Quinn stared at it, then at him. "You just happen to have this ready." "I prepare for contingencies." His face gave nothing away. Quinn slid into the leather seat, the ring cold in her clenched fist. Through the tinted windows, she watched her apartment building recede. Home for 3 years, now a crime scene. Her phone buzzed with texts from coworkers asking about the viral video. Ronan sat beside her in silence, his presence both reassuring and unsettling. His driver navigated through evening traffic while one guard followed in the sedan. Quinn tried to memorize the route, but exhaustion blurred the streets together. "Leo's safe?" she asked finally. "At the estate, with additional security. The fire at the warehouse is being handled." Quinn pressed her forehead against the cool window. "That's not actually an answer." "No," Ronan agreed. "It's not." The ring pressed into her palm, its weight a reminder of what she was agreeing to. Not marriage, she refused to think of it that way, but protection. A shield of Ronan's name and power against whoever had decided she was a threat. She opened her hand, studying the diamond. It caught streetlights like captured stars, beautiful and cold. Like Ronan himself, she thought. A perfect facade hiding whatever burned beneath. "The press will want a story," he said. "My PR team will handle it. A whirlwind romance, private ceremony planned for spring." "You really do think of everything." "I have to." His voice held no emotion. "Survival depends on controlling every variable." Quinn slipped the ring onto her finger, the weight foreign and heavy. "And am I just another variable to control?" Ronan turned to look at her, his eyes dark in the dim car. "No," he said softly. "You're the one variable I didn't account for." The car glided through iron gates into a curved driveway. Quinn saw gardens, fountains, security cameras disguised as landscaping lights. A fortress indeed, beautiful and fortified. She touched the ring again, its presence already feeling less strange. Temporary, she reminded herself. Just until the threat passed, just until she could reclaim her normal life. But as Ronan helped her from the car, his hand steady under her elbow, Quinn wondered if normal was possible after today. If it had ever been real at all. The iron gates of the Caruso estate parted silently as the SUV pulled through. Quinn watched through tinted windows as perfectly manicured gardens unfolded under security lights, the grounds stretching far beyond what she could see in the darkness. The mansion itself rose like a modern fortress, all clean lines and gleaming windows, with discreet cameras tracking every approach. A silver-haired woman in a tailored suit waited at the front entrance, her posture impeccable despite the late hour. "Ms. Hart," she greeted. "I'm Mrs. Chen, the household manager. Please follow me." Quinn shouldered her go-bag, conscious of her damp hair and borrowed clothes as she followed Mrs. Chen through the marble foyer. Staff members moved quietly through connecting halls, pretending not to notice while stealing glances at their boss's supposed fiancé. "Your suite is on the 2nd floor," Mrs. Chen explained, leading Quinn up a curved staircase. "Across from young Master Liao's room, as you requested." The guest suite was larger than Quinn's entire apartment, with a sitting area and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. But it was the proximity to Leo that mattered. She needed to be close if he had breathing problems after the smoke exposure. "I have some conditions," Quinn said, finding a notepad in the desk drawer. She wrote quickly, her nurse's handwriting unusually precise. She pushed the paper across the desk to Ronan, who had followed them up. He read it without expression, then signed the bottom with a heavy Mont Blanc pen. "Agreed," he said, with one addition. He wrote beneath his signature, "Public appearances required. Ring must be visible. The engagement needs to be believable. I've arranged breakfast with a reporter tomorrow. Friendly press to control the narrative about the warehouse." Quinn nodded reluctantly. It made tactical sense, even if it felt like another piece of her independence slipping away. Mrs. Chen showed her the suite's features, the panic button by the bed, the reinforced windows, the security tablet that showed camera feeds from the halls. Quinn listened while calculating response times in her head, mapping escape routes out of habit. A soft cry from across the hall had her moving before she realized it. Leo was half awake in his bed, oxygen mask fogged with his breathing. "Hey, buddy," Quinn said softly, falling into her trauma nurse voice. "Remember me from the hospital?" He nodded, eyes heavy. "The fire lady." "That's right." She checked his pulse, his breathing, his color. All good, just anxiety surfacing as sleep faded. "Want to hear a secret about firefighters?" Another nod as she sat on the edge of his bed. "We get scared too," she told him, adjusting his oxygen flow. "Every single time. That's what makes us brave. We're scared, but we go in anyway, because being brave isn't about not feeling fear. It's about doing what needs to be done, even when you're afraid." Leo's eyes drifted closed as she spoke, her calm voice and steady presence easing him back to sleep. She stayed until his breathing evened out completely, then slipped quietly from the room. In her suite, Quinn showered, scrubbing smoke and fear from her skin until the water ran clear. Her hair still smelled faintly of fire when she dried it, a reminder of how quickly everything had changed. Sleep felt impossible. She padded downstairs, finding the library by instinct. Books had always been her comfort in times of upheaval. The room was a testament to old money, with leather chairs and floor-to-ceiling shelves. But Quinn barely saw the volumes, drawn instead to the wall of windows overlooking the grounds. Security lights painted the gardens in patches of silver and shadow. Somewhere beyond the perfectly trimmed hedges and iron gates, someone wanted her dead for saving a child. Her apartment was a crime scene, her name would be in tomorrow's papers, and there was no safe way back to her old life right now. The realization settled like the quiet after a storm, heavy and absolute. No way. Not back to her apartment, her routine, her carefully constructed independence. At least not yet. The ring sat on her palm, catching moonlight through the windows. It was beautiful, she had to admit. Vintage Art Deco, with delicate metalwork supporting the center stone. Not flashy enough to impede her work, but substantial enough to sell the story they needed to tell. Quinn slipped it onto her finger, the weight already feeling less foreign than it had in the car. The diamond threw tiny rainbows against the dark wood paneling as she turned off the library lights, leaving the grounds to their silver-shadowed silence. Tomorrow would bring reporters and photographers, questions about a romance that didn't exist, and the beginning of a charade she never wanted to play. But tonight, in the quiet hours before dawn, Quinn could admit that sometimes survival meant accepting help, even from a dangerous man who treated marriage like a business transaction. She touched the ring one last time before heading upstairs, its presence both a shield and a chain. Across the hall, Leo slept peacefully, his monitors showing strong vitals. Whatever came next, protecting him was worth the price of her freedom. The suite felt less foreign as Quinn settled into the oversized bed, though sleep remained elusive. She left the security tablet on, its soft glow a reminder that while she might be trapped in this gilded cage, at least she wasn't alone in the dark anymore. The sun hadn't fully crested the horizon when Quinn's day began with a security briefing in Ronan's study. Marcus, the head of security, laid out blueprints of the estate with methodical precision. "Panic room here," he indicated, tapping a reinforced chamber near the kitchen. "Voice activation or keycard. These routes in red are your primary escape paths. Memorize them." Quinn traced the lines with her finger, calculating distances. "Response times. 3 minutes from any point in the house to secure locations. 2 minutes for armed response to reach you." Marcus's expression remained neutral. "We need you to wear this." He placed a slim silver bracelet on the desk. Quinn picked it up, examining the discreet tracker built into the clasp. "I'll wear it," she said, "but I control when it's active. I won't be monitored during hospital shifts." Marcus nodded curtly. "Acceptable. Your code phrase, if you're under duress, is 'my sister's wedding.' Use it if you can't speak freely." The housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, took over next, walking Quinn through the medical supplies kept in a cabinet near Leo's room. "We stock everything on the hospital's list," she explained, showing Quinn the organized shelves. Nebulizer, oxygen tanks, emergency medications. Quinn checked expiration dates and organized supplies with practiced efficiency. "I'll need to review his medical history. All of it. Mr. Caruso left the files in your suite." Leo was already awake when Quinn found him in the breakfast nook, picking at toast while completing math problems. His cough was mild but persistent. "How about we make a plan for today?" Quinn suggested, sitting beside him. She checked his pulse and breathing while talking, normal, if slightly elevated. "Something simple to help everything feel less crazy." Leo nodded, leaning into her calm presence. First, breathing exercises, the ones the respiratory therapist showed you, then schoolwork until lunch, rest time, and maybe a walk in the garden later if you're feeling up to it. Sound good? Can we feed the koi fish? Leo asked, perking up. Absolutely, but oxygen mask first, deal. He made a face but agreed, and Quinn helped him with the mask while explaining how deep breaths helped healing. They worked through his breathing exercises together, Quinn praising his effort even when he got frustrated. The morning passed in a quiet routine until Ronan returned from meetings around noon. Quinn cornered him in his office, closing the door firmly. We need to talk about the rumors, she said without preamble. Your staff thinks this engagement is fake, which it is. But Leo needs the truth from us, not whispers and speculation. Ronan's expression didn't change, but his fingers stilled on the papers he'd been reviewing. What do you suggest? Tell him I'm here to keep him safe, that adults are making careful choices to protect him. He's old enough to understand that much without being scared. Ronan studied her for a long moment. You're right, he said finally. He deserves honesty, even if it's simplified. That evening, Ronan sat with Leo in the library, Quinn hovering nearby as he explained in clear terms that Quinn was staying to help keep everyone safe. Like how she helped in the fire? Leo asked, curled against his father's side. Exactly like that, Ronan confirmed. She's very brave, and she's good at taking care of people. The grown-ups are handling some complicated things right now, but you don't need to worry about any of that. Your job is just to get better. Leo seemed to accept this, asking if Quinn could still help with his science homework even if she wasn't really going to marry his dad. Ronan's lips twitched in what might have been a smile as he assured his son that Quinn would help however she could. After dinner and evening medications, Quinn found herself restless, pacing the quiet halls. A soft voice drew her attention to Leo's partially open door. Ronan sat in the oversized armchair beside Leo's bed, reading from a worn copy of The Hobbit. One hand held a small flashlight steady, keeping shadows at bay while Leo drifted towards sleep. His other hand rested protectively on his son's shoulder, the same fingers that Quinn had seen break a man's wrist, now gentle as butterfly wings. The contrast struck her deeply. This man who commanded fear and respect, who could order deaths with a nod, reading about hobbits and dragons in the softest voice she'd ever heard him use. His shoulders were relaxed, his guard lowered just enough to let tenderness show through the cracks in his armor. Leo's breathing had evened out into sleep, but Ronan kept reading, as if the peaceful moment was as precious to him as it was to his son. The flashlight beam never wavered, holding the darkness at bay with the same steadiness he applied to everything else. Quinn watched for another moment, seeing not the Mafia boss who had upended her life, but a father doing his best to shelter his child from the violence of their world. It didn't excuse his methods or erase the danger he represented, but it made him human in a way that complicated her neat categories of right and wrong. The floorboard creaked beneath her foot, and Ronan looked up, meeting her eyes across the dimly lit room. Neither spoke, acknowledging with silent nods the fragile peace of the moment. Quinn stepped back into the hallway, leaving father and son to their bedtime ritual, carrying with her the image of those deadly hands holding a flashlight steady against the dark. The seamstress circled Quinn with practiced efficiency, pinning the navy silk dress while Quinn tried not to fidget. 3 hours until the charity gala, and her skin already crawled at the thought of being paraded as Ronan's fiancé. I need conditions, she said, meeting Ronan's eyes in the mirror. He stood in the doorway, examining the fit with clinical detachment. Name them. I choose my security detail. 2 guards I trust to act if something feels wrong. She smoothed the fabric, appreciating how it moved without restricting her mobility. And we establish a safe word. If I use it, we leave immediately, no questions asked. Agreed. His response came too quickly, making her suspicious. Just like that? You have good instincts. He stepped closer, adjusting the fall of fabric at her shoulder. I trust your judgment. Choose your guards from the active roster. The seamstress finished her work, and Quinn spent the remaining hours reviewing security files until she selected 2 former military medics, people who would understand her priorities and protocols. The gala buzzed with wealth and whispered power. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over marble floors, while string music drifted through conversations about charitable donations that Quinn suspected were cover for less legal exchanges. She kept her smile fixed and professional, playing her role while scanning exits and cataloging faces. The famous nurse, a smooth voice said behind her. Quinn turned to find Marco DeLuca, a rival boss known for his fake charm, blocking her path to the ballroom. He gestured toward the balcony. May I have a moment? I've been hoping to meet the woman who saved young Leo. Quinn's instincts flared, but refusing would cause a scene. She allowed him to guide her outside, positioning herself near the door where her chosen guards could see her. Quite the fairy tale, DeLuca mused, his hand sliding to her waist. A warehouse fire, a dramatic rescue, and now an engagement to one of the most powerful men in the city. Some might wonder about the timing. Some might remember their manners, Quinn replied evenly, ready to remove his hand herself if necessary. But before she could move, a familiar presence materialized beside them. Marco. Ronan's voice carried deadly quiet. Remove your hand from my fiancé. When DeLuca didn't immediately comply, Ronan gripped his wrist, applying precise pressure that made the other man's fingers spasm. That's your flexor digitorum profundus tendon. Shall we see how much pressure it takes to permanently damage your grip? My apologies, DeLuca ground out, face tight with pain. No offense intended. Ronan held the pressure a moment longer. Quinn saw the decision in his eyes to stop short of injury because she was watching, then released him. Don't let it happen again. They left immediately after, Quinn's chosen guards clearing a path through photographers who caught their early exit but missed the confrontation behind it. In the car, Quinn's hands shook with leftover adrenaline and something else she wasn't ready to name. The way Ronan's controlled violence had awakened a heat in her belly that had nothing to do with fear. Ronan shrugged out of his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. The weight of it settled around her like armor, carrying his warmth and the faint scent of his cologne. He stared out the window at passing streetlights, his profile sharp against the darkness. I will always remove threats, he said quietly. Including the ones who smile while they test boundaries. That won't change. Quinn pulled his jacket tighter, processing the implications. He would kill to protect what was his. Had probably already killed tonight if the quiet phone call he'd made leaving the gala was any indication. The wrong part was how right it felt, knowing he would destroy anyone who touched her without permission. At the estate, she checked on Leo first, finding him peacefully asleep with his stuffed dragon tucked under one arm. The normalcy of it centered her, reminded her why she'd agreed to this arrangement in the first place. Thunder rolled outside as she made her way to the library, drawn to its quiet comfort. Rain peppered the windows and lightning illuminated the grounds in brief, brilliant flashes. She found Ronan already there, pouring 2 fingers of whiskey into cut crystal glasses. He offered her one without speaking. Quinn accepted it, though she didn't drink, just held the cool glass against her palm while tension crackled between them like the storm outside. His sleeve was rolled up, showing the faint red marks on his knuckles where he'd gripped DeLuca's wrist. She shouldn't find that attractive. Shouldn't want to trace those marks with her fingers. Shouldn't imagine those hands on her body. Controlling but never cruel. Thank you, she said finally, for stopping when you did. For not hurting him worse in front of me. You're a healer, he replied, as if that explained everything. Maybe it did. Lightning flashed again, throwing his face into sharp relief. The angular jaw, the intensity in his eyes, as he watched her over the rim of his glass. The air felt charged with possibilities they weren't acknowledging, with the growing awareness that their careful arrangement was shifting into dangerous territory. Quinn set her untouched whiskey aside, needing distance from this magnetic pull between them. But another crack of thunder made her jump, and suddenly he was close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the whiskey on his breath. They stood frozen in that moment, neither advancing nor retreating, while rain lashed the windows and thunder shook the glass. Everything they weren't saying filled the space between them. How the violence should repel her but didn't. How his protective instincts spoke to something primal in her blood. How the line between necessity and desire was blurring with every passing day. Morning light filtered through Quinn's bedroom windows as her phone buzzed with news alerts. She scanned the headlines while getting dressed. Warehouse fire linked to dock dispute. Police investigate criminal connection, and most notably, Caruso engagement strategic move after attack. She closed the alerts with a sigh. Let them speculate. Her priority was Leo's recovery. By 9, they were in the garden doing breathing exercises. In through your nose, out through your mouth, Quinn demonstrated, watching Leo mirror her. Like blowing out birthday candles, but slower. The boy's breathing had improved significantly, though occasional coughs still punctuated their sessions. Between exercises, he pointed out birds and asked questions about the medical equipment she kept nearby. Pulse, oximeter, rescue inhaler, portable nebulizer. Why do you always check everything twice? Leo asked, watching her methodically organize supplies. Because double-checking keeps people safe, Quinn explained. It's like having a backup flashlight. Better to have it and not need it. After lunch, she changed into scrubs for her clinic shift. Ronan had argued against it, but Quinn insisted on maintaining her medical license. I need something normal, she'd told him. Something that's just mine. The clinic was busy but routine. Flu shots, blood pressure checks, minor injuries. Quinn lost herself in the familiar rhythm of patient care until her phone vibrated. A text from Ronan's security detail about an incident at the docks. She arrived home after dark to find 2 guards positioned outside the kitchen. Inside, Ronan sat under harsh fluorescent lights, his white shirt stained red at the shoulder. It's shallow, he said before she could ask. Negotiation got heated? Quinn gathered supplies from the medical cabinet, laying them out with precise movements. Shirt off! Her tone was professional, but her hands trembled slightly as she helped him with the buttons. The knife wound curved along his deltoid, more messy than deep. As she cleaned it, Quinn noticed other scars, old bullet wounds, knife marks, a burn pattern she recognized as cigarettes. My father's teaching methods, Ronan said, following her gaze. Pain was his favorite lesson. Quinn's hand stayed steady as she applied antiseptic. Some lessons leave permanent marks. My mother tried to run when I was 15, took my brother Tommy and me in the middle of the night. His voice was distant, like he was seeing it play out again. Father's men caught us before we hit state lines, made us watch what happened to her. Quinn paused, antiseptic pad hovering. I'm sorry. Tommy was 12, too young for what came after. I tried to take his punishments, but Ronan's jaw clenched. He overdosed at 19. Another lesson I failed to learn in time. She resumed cleaning the wound, giving him space to continue or stop. The kitchen was silent except for their breathing and the soft sounds of medical supplies. I've never told anyone that. Not outside family. He watched her hands as she worked. Why did you run into that warehouse? Quinn focused on applying the dressing, but answered, My mother died in a house fire when I was 12. Faulty wiring in the walls. I was at a sleepover. She secured the tape with practiced movements. I became a trauma nurse because I couldn't save her. Volunteer firefighter because I needed to do more than just handle the aftermath. Is that why you check Leo's breathing twice? I check everything twice now. She smoothed the last piece of tape. Because sometimes you only get one chance to keep someone alive. Ronan caught her wrist as she started to step back. His thumb found her pulse point, steady despite everything. You ran into fire for my son. I run into fires for everyone's children, but they both knew this was different. They stood close enough to share breath, the kitchen's fluorescent lights harsh above them. Quinn's hand was still on his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his skin through the dressing. The professional distance she maintained with patients had evaporated, replaced by an awareness that made her throat tight. His other scars drew her attention, maps of survival she wanted to trace with her fingers. The urge to touch them, to understand each story written in damaged tissue, surprised her with its intensity. Ronan's grip on her wrist softened but didn't release. His eyes held hers, dark with something that wasn't quite pain anymore. The guards outside the door seemed very far away, even though Quinn knew they were just steps from the threshold. She should step back, should maintain boundaries, should remember this was temporary, protective, practical. But her body wouldn't move, caught in the gravity of this moment where confessions hung in the air between them. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed the hour. Neither of them shifted away. The medical supplies lay forgotten on the counter, the used gauze spotted with his blood, the antiseptic sharp in the air. Quinn felt the shift like a physical thing, the moment when temporary arrangement became something else, something without a safe label. She could read it in the way his thumb still traced her pulse, in how her hand remained on his shoulder long after the dressing was secure. They stood suspended in that quiet kitchen, under unforgiving lights that showed every scar, every truth they'd offered up. No pretense of professional distance remained, no hiding behind practical necessity, just this new understanding, this recognition that boundaries had blurred beyond recovery. Neither spoke, neither needed to. The confessions they'd shared had already said enough. Thunder cracked overhead as emergency lights flickered to life, casting the estate's hallways in an eerie glow. Quinn had just changed for bed when she heard Leo's frightened cry pierce through the storm's rumble. She ran across the hall, finding him tangled in sheets, eyes wide with panic. Can't breathe, he gasped, hands clutching his chest. I'm here, Quinn said, kneeling beside his bed. Remember our game. Watch my hand. She raised 5 fingers, demonstrating the breath pattern they'd practiced. In through your nose, count with me. Leo's small hand mirrored hers, trembling fingers following as she lowered 1 digit at a time. 1, 2. Good job. Now out through your mouth, slow like blowing bubbles. Quinn kept her voice steady, anchoring him through the fear. Lightning illuminated his room in brief, harsh flashes. After several minutes, Leo's breathing evened out. The smoke, he whispered. In my dream, it was everywhere again. You're safe now. Quinn tucked the blanket around him, switched on his bedside lamp, and stayed until his eyes grew heavy. The storm continued its assault as she stepped into the hallway. Emergency lights cast long shadows, and rain drummed against the windows. Something pulled her toward the library, perhaps the faint glow visible beneath its doors, or maybe the certainty of who she'd find inside. Ronan stood by the tall windows, his silhouette stark against the storm-dark sky. He turned at her entrance, and Quinn's breath caught at the intensity in his gaze. Leo, he asked. Sleeping now. The nightmare triggered a panic attack, but we worked through it. Lightning flashed, illuminating the space between them. Quinn moved closer, drawn by some gravity she'd stopped trying to fight. Ronan's suit jacket was unbuttoned, his tie loosened, small signs of the long day's wear. Without thinking, she reached for his lapel, straightening it with careful fingers. You should rest too. His hand caught hers, pressing it flat against his chest. Quinn felt his heartbeat strong and rapid beneath her palm. The air changed, grew thick with possibility. When Ronan kissed her, it was like the storm itself. Powerful, inevitable. His mouth claimed hers with an intensity that made her gasp, hands threading through her hair. Quinn pressed closer, tasting whiskey and want on his tongue. Then the kiss changed, became something almost reverent. His touch turned gentle, thumbs tracing her cheekbones as if memorizing her features. When he pulled back, they were both breathing hard. We should stop, Ronan said, though his hand still framed her face. Should we? Yes. He stepped back, creating space between them. Your first real choice here shouldn't be made during a crisis with threats hanging over your head. Quinn touched her lips, still feeling the phantom pressure of his kiss. What if I've already chosen? Then choose again, when you're truly free to leave. His voice was rough. I won't take advantage of fear. Lightning flashed again, and Quinn saw the control it cost him to maintain distance. How long, she asked. How long what? How long have you wanted this? Ronan's laugh was low, almost pained. Since I saw you in that smoke-filled corridor, covered in soot and refusing to let anyone near my son until you were certain he was safe. He ran a hand through his hair. You stood there in borrowed gear, arguing with paramedics, and all I could think was that you were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Quinn moved closer again, but didn't touch him. And now? Now I know you're also the most dangerous. His eyes tracked her movement. Because you make me want things I can't afford to want. Like what? Like taking you upstairs and showing you exactly how much I've thought about this. His honesty was brutal, matching the storm's intensity. Like keeping you safe, even though I know you'd hate being sheltered. Like building a future where my son has someone who runs into fires to save him, and I have someone who isn't, afraid of my scars. The confession hung between them, heavy as the storm clouds outside. Quinn felt the weight of it, the truth in every word. I'm not afraid of your scars, she said softly. I'm afraid of how much I want to know their stories. Ronan's hands clenched at his sides. Quinn, I know. She stepped back this time. Not during a crisis. Not while I'm here under threat. But don't pretend this isn't real just because the timing isn't perfect. As if in response, the main power hummed back to life. Lights flickered on, harsh after the darkness, breaking the moment's spell. The clock on the mantel showed 3 a.m. You should sleep, Ronan said, his control back in place. Quinn nodded, turning toward the door. She paused at the threshold, looking back at him. When this is over, when the threats are handled and I can leave freely, ask me again. Ask you what? Ask me to stay. She walked back to her room, the storm finally quieting outside. The ring caught the restored light as she twisted it on her finger, no longer just a prop for protection. They'd crossed a line tonight, moved past pretense into something real and complicated. Quinn changed for bed again, listening to the rain's gentle aftermath. She wouldn't pretend this hadn't happened, wouldn't act like the kiss was a storm-induced mistake. They would move carefully, yes, but there was no going back to simple arrangements and practical decisions. She touched her lips one last time, remembering the moment when protection became passion, when crisis became choice. The rain tapped softly against her window, a gentler rhythm than before, as if the storm too had decided to move more carefully. Quinn sat at the kitchen table, watching Leo work through his multiplication tables. His tongue poked out in concentration, pencil gripped tight as he solved each problem. Normal moments like these felt precious now, fragile. 7 times 8, she prompted. 56, Leo beamed, writing the answer. The household lawyer, Marcus Chen, cleared his throat from the doorway. His expression made Quinn's stomach drop. Ms. Hart, could we speak privately? Quinn nodded to the housekeeper to watch Leo and followed Marcus to the study. He pulled out a legal document, thick with sticky tabs and highlights. A petition was filed this morning, he said, sliding it across the desk. Emergency custody hearing, preliminary date set for next week. Quinn's hands shook as she read. Who filed? Angela Russo Marcetti, Ronan's former sister-in-law. She's claiming the environment is too dangerous for Leo, citing the warehouse fire as evidence. Marcus tapped a highlighted section. She's also arguing your engagement is manufactured to manipulate public sympathy during custody proceedings. Quinn pressed her fingers to her temples. Leo's thriving here. His breathing's better. He's keeping up with school. Document everything, Marcus advised. Daily routines, medical care, educational progress. Will need it all. Before Quinn could respond, the study door opened. Thomas, head of security, entered with a manila envelope. Ma'am, there's something else you need to see. Quinn opened the envelope, pulling out photocopied ledgers. The paper felt heavy, damning. Her eyes caught on a familiar name. Michael Hart, her brother's signature, clear on payment receipts dated 3 years ago. These were found in a seized safe house, Thomas explained. Your brother did some driving work for the Marcetti syndicate before his death. The same syndicate rumored to have started the warehouse fire. Quinn's world tilted sideways. I didn't know, she whispered. Mike and I weren't close after our parents died. He moved away, called sometimes. She looked up at Thomas. I had no idea. Ronan believes you, Thomas assured her. But perception can be weaponized, Quinn finished. She'd learned that lesson well these past weeks. She spent the afternoon compiling notes for the custody hearing, Leo's daily schedule, breathing exercises, tutoring progress. She photographed his completed schoolwork, documented his improved sleep patterns, every piece of evidence that showed he was safe and thriving. Around dinner, her phone buzzed with notifications. An anonymous account had posted photos from the charity gala, her and Ronan leaving early, his hand protective at her back. The caption dripped with insinuation. Convenient timing? Sources say engagement arranged after warehouse incident. What's the real story? Quinn's hands clenched. She'd expected this, but it still stung. The estate hummed with tension. Staff whispered in corners. Security doubled their patrols. Quinn focused on maintaining Leo's routine, dinner, homework review, bedtime story. She recorded everything in precise detail. Why's everyone so worried? Leo asked as she tucked him in. Sometimes grown-ups get scared too, Quinn said carefully. You don't need to worry. Your dad and I are handling everything. Promise? Promise. She kissed his forehead. Now deep breaths like we practiced. Later, she found Ronan in his office, surrounded by papers and tablets. His jaw was tight with controlled fury. I'll shut down this custody petition, he said without looking up. Angela won't get near him. Quinn sank into a chair. We need to do this right. Everything documented, everything above board. She spread out her notes from the day. No shadows they can use against us. The engagement, I know how it looks, Quinn cut in. But we tell the truth. We show Leo's doing well, that he's safe and cared for. We prove Angela's claims wrong with facts, not force. Ronan finally met her eyes. And your brother's connection to the Marcettis? Also the truth. I didn't know, but I understand how it complicates things. Quinn's voice stayed steady. We address it directly if asked. No hiding, no excuses. It makes you vulnerable. I was vulnerable the moment I carried Leo out of that warehouse. She leaned forward. But I won't let them use my brother's mistakes to hurt that little boy. Midnight approached, the house settling into uneasy quiet. Quinn reviewed her documentation one last time. Medical notes, educational progress, daily routines. every detail that proved Leo was thriving, not endangered. "The only way we win this is with truth," she whispered. "No cracks for them to pry open, no shadows to twist." Ronan's hand covered hers, warm and sure. The ring on her finger caught the lamplight. No longer just a prop, but a promise. To protect Leo, to face whatever came next together. Outside, security lights swept the grounds in steady patterns. Inside, paper trails and truth waited like weapons. Quinn squeezed Ronan's hand, both of them understanding that some battles weren't won with force, but with carefully documented facts and unwavering resolve. They worked through the night, building their defense with paper and ink and truth, every sheet filed, every detail noted, ready to prove that love and protection weren't mutually exclusive, that sometimes the most dangerous choice was also the right one. The clock ticked toward morning as Quinn organized the final documents. Her notes painted a clear picture: Leo safe, cared for, surrounded by people who would move heaven and earth to protect him. Not just with force, but with truth, documented, undeniable truth. The estate's morning quiet shattered with the discovery. Quinn watched from the doorway as Thomas, head of security, extracted a thumbnail drive from Maria's desk drawer. The young assistant's hands trembled as she confessed. "They paid me to watch," Maria whispered. "Just schedules at first, then medication logs, daily routines." Quinn's stomach clenched. She'd trusted Maria with Leo's medical records, his breathing exercise charts. Everything that proved his care was exemplary. "Who's they?" Thomas's voice was granite. "Both sides." Maria's mascara smeared as she wiped her eyes. The Marcettis wanted proof of vulnerabilities, and Mrs. Angela's lawyers wanted anything that made the household look unstable. Quinn felt the weight of eyes on her back. Staff members clustered in the hallway, whispering. The narrative was already spreading. The hero nurse wasn't what she seemed. Her brother's connection to the Marcettis made every suspicion stick. "Show me exactly what you sent," Thomas demanded. Maria pulled up emails on her phone, carefully selected fragments that painted a damning picture. Quinn adjusting Leo's medications, Quinn accessing secure areas, Quinn's late-night conversations with Ronan. All true moments twisted into something sinister. "I never meant," Maria started. "Save it." Thomas nodded to his men. "Take her to the secure room for full questioning." Quinn retreated to her suite, mind racing. Every sideways glance from staff felt like accusation now. The custody hearing was 3 days away, and this leak could poison everything they'd built. She pulled out her overnight bag and started packing, essentials only. Her friend Sarah had a guest room across town. The solution was clear, even if it hurt. Ronan found her as she was zipping the bag closed. "No," his voice filled the doorway. "It's the only way." Quinn kept her hand steady. "We need Leo's environment to look spotless before court. No hints of instability, no questions about my presence." "You're letting them win." "I'm protecting Leo." She met his gaze. "If I stay, every move I make will be scrutinized. They'll twist everything into proof that you've compromised security by trusting me." His jaw clenched. "I don't care what they think." "But the judge will." Quinn stepped closer. "Angela's team will paint me as an infiltrator using Leo to get close to you. My brother's connection makes it believable enough to create doubt." The muscle in Ronan's cheek ticked. She could see him wanting to overrule her, to keep her close where he could ensure her safety. But they both knew she was right. "Thomas will drive you," he said finally, steel barely sheathed in his voice. Quinn nodded. "I'll text hourly updates through him, and I'll record Leo's bedtime story so his routine doesn't break." She moved past Ronan, bag in hand. The staff parted silently as she walked to the front door where Thomas waited. No one quite met her eyes. Leo came running down the stairs. "Quinn, where are you going?" She knelt to his level. "I need to help some other people for a few days, but I'll record your bedtime story every night, okay? And I'll be thinking about you. Promise you'll come back?" Quinn hugged him tight, meeting Ronan's eyes over Leo's shoulder. "Promise." The drive to Sarah's apartment was silent. Quinn watched the estate disappear in the rearview mirror, the iron gates closing behind them like a period at the end of a sentence. Sarah welcomed her with worried eyes and fresh coffee. "Stay as long as you need." Quinn set up in the guest room, unpacking only what she needed for a few days. Her phone buzzed with the first update to Thomas. "Settled in, all secure." She recorded Leo's bedtime story, keeping her voice steady as she read about brave knights who sometimes had to ride away to protect their kingdoms. When she finished, her finger hovered over Ronan's number before she locked the screen. Evening crept in. Quinn lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the textured ceiling. The ring felt heavy on her finger. She wanted to call Ronan just to hear his voice, to know if he was as restless as she was. But that would defeat the purpose of this separation. Across the city, in Leo's doorway, Ronan stood in the dark. His son slept peacefully, Quinn's recorded voice still playing softly from the tablet. His jaw ached from holding back words he couldn't say. The house felt wrong without her. Too quiet, too formal, too much like before when every room was just space to move through. He'd gotten used to finding her in the library, discussing Leo's progress, in the kitchen, catching her eye across rooms, and knowing she understood the weight he carried. But she was right. They needed to be spotless before court. No shadows, no questions, no ammunition for their enemies. So he stood in his son's doorway, listening to Quinn's voice tell stories about brave choices and kept his hands at his sides instead of reaching for his phone. The night stretched long before them both. Quinn curled around a spare pillow in Sarah's guest room while Ronan prowled his empty study. Neither slept, both knowing that sometimes protection meant distance, even when every instinct screamed to close it. Around midnight, Quinn sent her last update of the day through Thomas. All secure. Leo's recording sent. Good night. She stared at her dark phone screen, fighting the urge to add more. Across the city, Ronan read the message, his jaw clenched tight enough to ache as he stood sentinel in Leo's doorway, guarding what remained while part of their foundation had chosen to step away. The night settled around them both, heavy with things unsaid. Sometimes the hardest part of protection was knowing when to let go, even temporarily for the greater good. They both understood this, even as they lay awake in separate parts of the city, counting the hours until dawn. Quinn pushed through the clinic's side door, exhausted but satisfied. The 4-hour shift had kept her skills sharp and her license active. More importantly, it maintained normalcy while the custody battle loomed. She checked her phone. 2 texts from Leo about his science homework and 1 from Thomas confirming her pickup. The white van appeared too fast. Before she could step back, rough hands grabbed her shoulders. The world went dark as a bag covered her head. Plastic zip ties bit into her wrists, drawing blood. "Don't fight!" a voice growled. "Boss wants you breathing, for now." They shoved her onto the van's metal floor. The engine roared to life, tires squealing. Quinn forced herself to breathe slowly, counting turns. Left, right, straight for 10 minutes. Sharp right. Her nurse's training kicked in. Stay calm, gather data, survive. Across town, Ronan's phone lit up with an unknown link. His security chief's face went stark white as the live stream began. Quinn sat bound to a metal chair, bag still over her head. A masked figure walked into frame. "Simple trade, Caruso. The waterfront territory and your kid goes to his aunt at the hearing, or..." The figure flicked a lighter near Quinn's covered head. "She burns like she likes it, running into fires to play hero." Ronan's knuckles went white on his desk, but his voice stayed steady as he issued orders. Total estate lockdown. Leo moved underground with his aunt and 3 calls he'd hoped never to make. The first went to Martinez, a pilot who specialized in off-radar flights. "I need infrared sweeps of every abandoned industrial site within 50 miles. The second call reached Gian, a hacker who'd avoided prison. Thanks to Ronan's influence. "Find that stream's origin. I want building specs and security feeds." The third number connected him to O'Malley, who controlled the dock worker unions. "Who moved accelerant through your territory last week? The warehouse fire wasn't random." In the glassworks, Quinn focused on details through her fear. Chemical smells, industrial cleaners, and something sharper. Old machinery groaning as wind pushed through broken windows. Every 20 minutes, a train horn echoed from the north. She built a mental map, praying Ronan would understand the clues when she got them out. "Your girl's tough," one kidnapper said. "Not even shaking." "She will be," another answered. "When the flames start." Quinn's heart raced, but she steadied her breathing. Panic helped no one. She tested the zip ties, feeling for weak points. The chair creaked. Metal. Old. Probably rusty at the joints. She could work with that. Back at the estate, information flowed in. Martinez's infrared showed heat signatures at 3 locations. Jean traced the stream's signal, bouncing through servers but narrowing down. O'Malley's intel pointed to a crew operating from abandoned factories, including an old glassworks where the union used to make bottles. Ronan spread maps across his desk, marking intersecting data points. The glassworks sat near active train tracks, matched the signal trace, and had the industrial infrastructure for the kidnappers' threat. "Have teams ready," he told his security chief. "No sirens, no lights. We go dark." He checked the time, 3:45 a.m. In the underground suite, Leo would be sleeping while his aunt kept watch. Ronan initiated a secured video call. Leo's sleepy face appeared. "Dad, did you find Quinn?" "I'm going to bring her home," Ronan promised, his voice gentle but firm. "Remember what she taught you about being brave?" "That it's okay to be scared," Leo said. "But we have to be careful too." "That's right. I need you to be careful and brave for me now. Stay with Aunt Marie until I come back with our Quinn." "Promise you'll both come home?" Ronan's jaw tightened. "I promise to do everything possible to make that happen. I love you, Leo." "Love you too, Dad." The call ended. Ronan moved through the garage, selecting a nondescript sedan. He loaded the trunk methodically, zip tie cutters, tactical gear, weapons checked and secured. His phone buzzed, GN confirming the signal trace to the glassworks. The eastern sky showed hints of pre-dawn gray. Ronan's hands were steady as he closed the trunk. The weight of his weapons felt familiar, but the weight in his chest was new. He'd eliminated threats before, protected his family with calculated violence. But this was different. Quinn wasn't just an asset to protect. She was the woman who ran into fire to save his son, who taught Leo about brave choices, who challenged Ronan's control while earning his trust, who kissed him in the storm-dark library like she wasn't afraid of his. Darkness. He would bring her home, not because she was his claimed fiancée, or because losing her would weaken his position, but because she was Quinn. Fierce, compassionate Quinn, who belonged with them, who made his fortress feel like home. The sedan's engine turned over quietly. Ronan adjusted his shoulder holster and checked his phone one last time. 4 teams were in position around the glassworks, awaiting his signal. Martinez had a helicopter, ready for aerial support. Gian monitored security cameras and power grids. Dawn approached. Soon the trains would start running more frequently, marking time as Quinn had surely noticed. Ronan pulled out of the garage, his mind clear and focused. Every skill he'd learned, every favor he could call in, every ounce of control he'd built his empire on, all of it centered on one goal: bringing Quinn home to where she belonged. The sedan merged with pre-dawn traffic, just another car heading out of the city. But inside, Ronan's determination burned cold and precise. He would dismantle the glassworks brick by brick if needed. The kidnappers had made a fatal mistake, thinking Quinn was leverage against him. They didn't understand that she was family now, and Ronan Caruso protected his family at any cost. The glassworks loomed against pre-dawn darkness, its broken windows like hungry mouths. Ronan and his team moved through the loading dock with practiced silence, boots whisper soft on concrete dusted with decades of grit. Each man knew his role. No words needed, just the subtle hand signals that meant life or death. Inside, Quinn tracked time by her heartbeat. 20 minutes since the last train. Her shoulders ached from the zip ties, but she kept working the chair's rusty joints, feeling metal weaken with each careful rock. "Time for your message," the guard said, pulling out a phone. "Boss wants it special." A suppressed shot cracked through the shadows. Quinn kicked hard, throwing herself in the chair backward. The guard's phone clattered across the floor as he reached for his weapon. Too late. Ronan emerged from the darkness like a nightmare made flesh, his movements precise and lethal. He cut Quinn's restraints in 2 swift motions, helping her to her feet with hands that belied his deadly focus. "Stay close!" Gunfire erupted, muzzle flashes strobing through industrial gloom. Ronan's body curved around Quinn, shielding her as bullets pinged off metal beams. His team moved with coordinated efficiency, taking down threats with surgical accuracy. A stray round punched through a rusted drum. Liquid splashed across the floor, its chemical reek making Quinn's eyes water. Fire caught with a whoosh, racing up a support beam and spreading across pooled fuel. "Move," Ronan commanded, one arm steady around Quinn's waist as they navigated through growing chaos. Heat distorted the air, making shadows dance. Sparks rained down, catching in Quinn's hair, until Ronan brushed them away with surprising gentleness. They pushed through smoke and gunfire. Ronan's actions shifted between extremes. One moment dropping an attacker with cold efficiency, the next cradling Quinn's head as they ducked under a falling beam. His touch remained careful, even as his shots rang true, as if he could separate the violence necessary for survival from the tenderness she deserved. "Left," Quinn gasped, remembering the layout she'd mapped in her mind. "Loading bays faster than the front." Ronan trusted her direction instantly, redirecting their path. The fire roared behind them, consuming decades of dust and debris. His team covered their retreat, professionals who understood that protecting Quinn meant protecting their boss's heart. Glass shattered overhead. Quinn stumbled on uneven flooring, but Ronan's grip never wavered. He guided her through the nightmare landscape of flame and shadow like he'd memorized every step. Perhaps he had. She wouldn't put it past his meticulous planning. They burst onto asphalt as sirens wailed in the distance. Dawn painted the sky in tentative pink, turning smoke into rose-colored clouds. Quinn sucked in clean air, letting Ronan support her weight as reaction set in. His team secured the perimeter, while fire trucks screamed closer. Ronan turned Quinn to face him, his eyes intense. He pulled her ring from his pocket, the one she'd left behind for safety, and slid it onto her finger with deliberate care. "You were never leverage," he said, voice rough with emotion. "They thought hurting you would force my hand. They didn't understand that you're not a bargaining chip. You're essential. To Leo. To me." He cupped her face with battle-steady hands. "Stay. Not because of threats or protection. Stay. Because we want forever, on your terms." Quinn's breath hitched. She covered his hands with hers, feeling the strength that had both killed and protected in the last hour. "My terms are clear," she said. "Complete truth between us. No spin, no strategic omissions. Equal say in Leo's care and routines. I won't be a decorative stepmother. And I want my brother's debts formally settled. His name cleared so thoroughly that no one can ever use it against us again." "Done," Ronan agreed without hesitation. "All of it. Whatever you need to feel secure with us." Fire engine lights painted the scene in rotating red as first responders arrived. Ronan's security chief approached with a sat phone, but Ronan waved him back. This moment belonged to them. Quinn's fingers traced the ring she'd first accepted for protection, now a symbol of choice. "I should check in with Leo's night nurse. He'll be waking soon." Ronan helped her into the waiting car, his touch still gentle despite the gunpowder residue on his sleeves. Quinn pulled out her phone as dawn brightened, sending a quick message to the head of security. "Safe. Tell Leo breakfast will be exactly on time." The car pulled away as firefighters attacked the burning building. Quinn leaned into Ronan's side, exhausted but certain. His arms settled around her shoulders, and she felt the last of his battle tension ease. They'd chosen each other, not from necessity or manipulation, but because some loves were worth fighting through fire to protect. The courtroom's polished wood and stern formality felt worlds away from smoke and gunfire. Quinn sat straight-backed beside Ronan as their attorney methodically presented evidence, her hands steady in her lap despite the stakes. The mole's signed confession came first, detailed admissions of feeding selective information to both the rival syndicate and the petitioners. Surveillance records followed, showing money transfers that linked the warehouse arson to their enemies. Quinn watched the judge's expression shift as her documented care plans were entered. Leo's daily schedules, breathing exercises, educational progress, and medical tracking that showed dedicated attention to both physical and emotional well-being. Emergency personnel testified about the warehouse fire and the attack on Quinn's apartment. The fire captain's description was particularly moving, how Quinn had shielded Leo with her own body as debris fell, how she'd insisted on his care before her own. "The timing of this engagement raises concerns," the judge stated, peering over reading glasses. "It appears remarkably convenient." Ronan's response was measured, his tone even. "Your Honor, when survival demands quick decisions, sometimes love moves faster than social convention would prefer. Quinn proved herself willing to die protecting my son before she knew anything about our world. That kind of loyalty deserves to be treasured, not questioned." Quinn found her voice, steady and clear. "Love can grow where trust is proven in fire, Your Honor. We chose each other, first for safety, then for family." The judge studied them both before denying the petition, with firm warning about Leo's security. Regular welfare checks were ordered. Quinn welcomed them openly, knowing transparency would protect them all. That afternoon, sunlight streamed through stained glass as they gathered in a private chapel. Leo stood between them, small fingers carefully arranging a white boutonniere in Ronan's lapel, while Quinn watched with misty eyes. The ceremony was intimate, just family, trusted security, and the few friends who understood their world. Quinn wore a simple cream dress, Ronan a dark suit without his usual weapon. Their vows were straightforward: to protect, to choose each other daily, to build something lasting from the chaos that brought them together. Legal documents were signed alongside marriage papers. Joint authority over Leo's care, ensuring Quinn's role as mother would have real weight. Another document formally settled her brother's old debts through legal channels that couldn't be exploited again. Quinn's signature was firm. Ronan's hand covered hers briefly after, a gesture of unity. The celebration back at the estate felt like exhaling after holding breath too long. Security maintained vigilance, but with lighter steps, the formal dining room filled with quiet laughter and the clink of glasses. Leo challenged Ronan to his favorite card game, dealing with exaggerated ceremony. Quinn couldn't hide her smile as her husband, that word still new and weighty, let their son win while pretending intense concentration. Leo's victory dance made even the guards crack grins. Quinn found herself deep in discussion with Dr. Chen from the trauma unit, mapping plans for a specialized burn care initiative. Her medical expertise would now have broader reach, backed by Ronan's resources and connections. They sketched initial proposals on cocktail napkins. Quinn's passion for healing finding new channels. Security protocols shifted subtly throughout the evening. Guards moved with relaxed precision, comfort replacing crisis mode. The estate felt less like a fortress and more like a home, though Quinn knew vigilance would never truly fade. Later, in their bedroom, moonlight spilled across polished floors. Ronan's gun still sat on the nightstand. Some habits wouldn't change, but his touch was gentle as he drew Quinn to the window. His hand settled at her waist, warm through silk as they looked out over the quiet grounds. "I choose you," Quinn said softly, no dramatic flourish needed. "Today and tomorrow and every day after." "And I choose you," Ronan answered, his usual steel melted to tenderness. "Not for protection or appearances. For love." They stood together in comfortable silence, acknowledging without words that danger would always circle their walls. Enemies would watch and wait. Threats would evolve. But within these rooms, they'd built something real. A family forged in fire and chosen in strength. Leo's laughter echoed from down the hall, where his aunt was helping him get ready for bed. Quinn smiled, hearing the pure joy in it. They'd given him stability without sacrificing truth, protection without paranoia. Ronan's thumb traced circles on Quinn's hip, grounding them both in the quiet moment. She leaned back against his chest, feeling his steady heartbeat. They'd earned this peace, paid for it in smoke and blood and careful choices. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, welfare checks to prepare for, security to maintain, a burn unit initiative to launch. But tonight was theirs to savor, this pocket of calm in their complicated world. Quinn touched her ring, remembering how it had first felt like a chain and now felt like an anchor. "No regrets," she murmured. "No regrets," Ronan agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. Outside, guards patrolled with practiced ease. Inside, they held each other, two people who had found love in unlikely circumstances and chosen to nurture it into something lasting. Their devotion, tested by fire and stronger for it, was finally completely their own.